Hi everybody and welcome back. This is part 2 of our video series on the relative clauses and the relative pronouns. In part 2, in this video, I will give you a tour of the English relative pronouns. And we start with who and whom. Here's an example. Do you know the man who lives next door? Who lives next door is your relative clause. Lives is the verb of your relative clause, and who is the subject of your relative clause, because who lives is your subject-verb combination. I think we can do this pretty quickly because we went through this in video number 1. Another example, and things changed a bit. The woman who I was playing tennis with was my sister. The woman who I was playing tennis with was my sister. Now here, who I was playing tennis with is your relative clause, and the I is your subject of the relative clause, because I was playing tennis is your subject-verb combination. That makes who your object of the relative clause. And this is exactly how we use who. We use who as the subject or object pronoun for people. First example, the man who lives next door. Who is the subject pronoun, refers to a person, of course. Second example, the woman who I was playing tennis with. Who is the object pronoun and refers to a person. Use who as the subject or object pronoun for people. Have a look at that preposition with here. And your grammar books will tell you that in combination with who, if you want to use a preposition in your relative clause, put it at the end of the relative clause. So it's the woman who I was playing tennis with was my sister. We continue with whom. I've changed that last sentence a little bit. The woman with whom I was playing tennis was my sister. Who is also correct here. We had that sentence. And here it's the woman with whom I was playing tennis was my sister. Now the first thing we see is that our preposition has changed place. And grammar books tell you that if you want to use a preposition in combination with whom in a relative clause, put the preposition right in front of the whom. Now the whom here, of course, is the object, because I was playing tennis is your subject-verb combination of your relative clause. So the I is still your subject, which makes whom the object. And this is exactly how we use it. We use whom as the object pronoun for people. And only the object pronoun. Whom cannot be used as the subject of the relative clause. It's got to be the object. And it's used for people, here the woman. It does sound a bit formal, though. This is why we usually see whom in written English, and we don't hear it a lot. Here's another example. The boy whom we met was very nice. The boy who we met was very nice is also correct, of course. Whom is a bit more formal, but whom again is the object here of your relative clause, because we met is your subject-verb combination of your relative clause, and that makes whom the object pronoun for people. Here, the boy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so much for whom, and we continue with whose. An example for you. Do you know the boy whose dad is a pilot? Do you know the boy whose dad is a pilot? Now the whose dad here refers to the boy. It's the boy's dad, of course, and this is a possessive. And we use whose for possession of people, animals, or objects. Possession of people, animals, or objects. Here is your possessive. The boy's dad is a pilot. This apostrophe S is a possessive, and this is why we have whose in that relative clause. Do you know the boy whose dad is a pilot? You can also look for ways of putting his, her, their, or its into the sentence. The boy's dad is a pilot. His dad is a pilot. use whose as a relative pronoun here for possession of people and animals, of course, but also for objects. The car whose driver died in the crash. The car whose driver died in the crash. Whose driver refers to the car. Its driver died in the crash, and that's a possessive. And the car is an object, of course. We use whose for possession of people, animals, or objects. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so much for whose. We continue with which and that. Did you hear the cat which was screaming all night? Did you hear the cat which was screaming all night? Which was screaming all night is your relative clause, which is the subject of your relative clause. Which was screaming is your subject-verb combination, and which refers to the cat, and we use which as the subject or object pronoun for animals, here the cat, or objects. Not for people, because I've just told you that you use who or whom for people. So which is the subject or object pronoun for animals or objects. The car which I was driving last night was my dad's. The car which I was driving last night was my dad's. Here, which is the object of the relative clause. I was driving is your subject-verb combination. Which refers to the car, which is an object, of course, a thing. Did you hear the cat which was screaming all night? The car which I was driving last night was my dad's. We use which as the subject or object pronoun for animals or things, objects. Let me tell you that is also possible in that sentence. The car that I was driving last night was my dad's. It even sounds better than which. But before we continue with that, we have to have a look at another which is also very important. Look at the sentence, please. You've all passed the test, comma, which is no surprise. You've all passed the test, which is no surprise. I guess you noticed that for the first time in this video we actually have a comma here, and that comma is important because with that comma, and you hear it from how I pronounced and how I read the sentence, this which refers to the whole sentence and not only to the test. Leave out the comma, the which refers to the test. But the way it is here, you've all passed the test, which is no surprise. We use comma which, and the comma is important, to refer to a whole sentence or fact. Use comma which to refer to a whole sentence or fact. You've all passed the test, comma, which is no surprise. German speakers, attention please, we are in danger of putting what into that sentence instead of which, because if I translate that this sentence into German, ihr habt alle den Test bestanden, Komma, was ja keine Überraschung ist, then we have was in that sentence, and was we usually translate with what, because it's like the question. It's not correct here, you have to put which here. What is not a relative pronoun. So please be careful, put comma which if you refer to a sentence or fact. Here is another example. Mark tells everyone that Kevin is an idiot, which isn't true, of course. Now here, clearly, the which does not refer to the noun idiot, it refers to the whole fact. Mark tells everyone that Kevin is an idiot, which isn't true, of course. Use comma which to refer to a sentence or fact. All right, and now I have that for you. The car that I drive is old. The car which I drive is old is also possible here. And we use that when we want to refer to objects, animals, or people. objects, animals, or people in defining relative clauses. I'm not going to explain to you now what a defining relative clause is. This is a topic I'm talking about in the next video, in the third video. At the moment, that's all you need to know. It's only for defining relative clauses. Now, that here refers to the car, which of course is an object. The dog that bit me was huge. The dog that bit me was huge. Here, that refers to the dog, which of course is an animal. That refers to objects and animals. And in both sentences, you can actually put in which is just as good. The car which I drive is old. The dog which bit me was huge, which is also referring to objects and animals. And that can also be used for people. The man that called me was my best friend. The man that called me was my best friend. Now, the man refers, that refers to the man. The man is a person, and this is perfectly all right. In this sentence, of course, you can use who. The man who called me was my best friend is just as good. All right, we use that to refer to objects, animals, or people, but only in defining relative clauses. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're almost finished now. There's one more page. There is something in English we call relative adverbs, and I actually put down the 3 most important ones for you. The reason why I didn't call you is that my phone didn't work. This why here is a relative adverb, and we use it when we want to express reason. The reason why I didn't call you is that my phone didn't work. That's a perfectly all right English sentence, of course. I remember the day when we first met. I remember the day when we first met. It was when here, and when we want to refer to time. We can actually throw out the when and put in a relative pronoun, and then I can say, I remember the day on which we first met. But I remember the day when we first met is perfectly all right, and the same goes for where. That's the restaurant where we met for the first time. It's perfectly all right English, of course. We use where as a relative adverb when we want to refer to place. You can, of course, also put in a real relative pronoun and say, that's the restaurant in which we met for the first time. So, why, when, and where, 3 relative adverbs. There are some more, but maybe those 3 are the most important ones. If you want to look at that first sentence again, the only way to make this sentence even better is to leave out the relative adverb all the way. The reason I didn't call you is that my phone didn't work. This then is a contact clause, and the contact clause is part of video number 3, where I will talk about the different types of relative clauses, the defining and the non-defining relative clause, and also the contact clause. So thanks for watching. I see you when you get there, and bye-bye.